We have seen a rise in anti-Semitism. And folks, I believe the rise in anti-Semitism we're seeing in the United States is a rise in anti-Semitic and anti-Israel rhetoric that we see from elected officials and in mainstream. They might be lefty, but still pretty mainstream political movements that are stemming a lot of times growing out of our college campuses. In 2022, there were 3,600 anti-Semitic incidents recorded in the U.S. That is a 36% increase from 2021. The group who experiences the most hate crimes in the United States are Jewish people in the United States. That gets overlooked a lot because it's a much smaller minority group, if you will, than some other groups, and it doesn't get as much attention. But a lot of this we know is stemming on our college campuses. We focused in on what was happening. We have clients at Hunter College, which is part of the City University of New York. We saw that horrendous speech the students chose as their student speaker to give at the City University of New York School of Law. And it outraged not just us, but also Coach Bruce Pearl, who coaches the Auburn Tigers basketball team. And Coach Pearl is joining us now. Coach, we appreciate you joining the show and for speaking out.
I'm grateful to be with you, Jordan. Thank you for bringing this subject up.
You know, Coach, let me just go to this first. It feels like a lot of this, the growth of this move of anti-Semitism cloaked in, well, I'm anti-Israel and trying to define these separation or boycott, divestment, and sanctions movements, which many states bar, including the state of New York. But she said that her school is doing that, so she might have gotten into some legal jeopardy. But the idea is that it's growing on college campuses, and as these young people become adults and enter the adult world, it becomes normal for them to have this anti-Semitic or anti-Israel position. I mean, you're on the college campus, and you feel like as your job as a coach of a program, an SEC program, you're not afraid to speak out. Do you feel it on the college campuses?
I think you feel it and you see it. Now, fortunately, we don't see it and we don't feel it at Auburn University because, we're in a Christian community, and most of the folks in this community actually read their Bible. And, one of the things that I think is creating the growth in anti-Semitism is there aren't enough Jewish folks in Temple. And there are enough people that are going to church and reading their Bible and understanding the history of the Middle East and the history of Judea and Samaria and the history of Israel, because the things that are being taught and or said are just not completely accurate. And they're spinning a tale. And understand, young people, they want to make a difference. Young people want to, when they hear about apartheid, or when they hear about discrimination, and when they hear about people being oppressed, young people want to do something about it. And I admire them for it. I think it's great. The problem is they're listening to lies. They're listening to complete falsehoods. And, I've been to Israel a dozen times. You want to talk about diversity. You want to talk about diversity of color, of race, of religion, of sexual orientation. It's called intersectionalism. It's about, the have-nots, simply getting everybody on their side, going against the haves. And for some, reason, the Jewish people are perceived to be haves. Well, you know what? If we do have, it's because we worked our butt off to get it. And that's the great thing about this country, is anybody can be anything. Barack Obama was president for 2 terms in this country. Where else in the world does that happen? And yes, there is absolutely a challenge with racism in this country. We've made progress. We've got a ways to go. Israel is an amazing place. Can it get better? Of course it could. But the lies that are being told are obviously twisting the minds of our young people.
Yeah, I mean, these are all human-run governments, so nothing's perfect. You strive to always make things better, and that's the goal. And then when you have an ally like Israel, you work together. And if you have disagreements, usually with an ally, you don't air those disagreements publicly. You don't threaten an ally publicly. And also the rhetoric back here at home. I want to turn it back home because it can be dangerous then for Jewish students on college campuses. We're seeing a lot of problems with Jewish professors we represent and Jewish student groups that we represent on campuses at mainstream universities, in places that people may not expect would be as hostile. You said, that it's grateful that you're at a university that does not have that significant problem on campus, and you're able to speak out. But I wonder how many other individuals like you, Coach Pearl, who have the same feelings but are scared of speaking out because of what the college might do or what the students might demand. They might demand that you're fired, or might demand that you're removed, or to try to silence you from speaking out on some of these other campuses, even when they know it's the right thing to do. They're too afraid.
Yeah, that's absolutely the case. And listen, I don't want to talk out of both sides of my mouth. I'm not into boycotts. And the BDS movement is a terrible, terrible movement in Israel because, quite frankly, it hurts the Palestinian and the Arab population more than it hurts anybody else. The whole concept of saying, okay, we're going to boycott products from Israel, or we're going to boycott from products from Judea and Samaria. The vast majority, look, in Israel, there are 9 million people, 6 million Jews, and 3 million Arabs. Okay, these 3 million Arabs, most of them are employed. More than half of the medical profession, doctors and nurses in the state of Israel, are Arab. That doesn't get published. I mean, your mother always wanted you to grow up and be a doctor. Well, guess what? Most of the doctors in Israel are not Jewish. They're Arab. You talk about, what that diversity brings. You're going to go ahead and boycott and cancel these businesses. Those businesses may close down. They move, and what's going to happen is their employees are going to be out of work. The way to get to peace is peace through prosperity. The way to get to peace is to be like it was before the Oslo Accords, which built walls around different communities. It's when people intermingle, when the races mingle, when the religions mingle. That's how we get to become better neighbors. Our leaders are not obviously not allowing us to do it. So here back at home, where there are larger Jewish populations, like in New York, or universities on campus where larger Jewish populations, that's where these people that want to say things that are not true about Israel, they're anti-Semitic, but they use it as anti-Zionism, anti-Israel. Oh, we're not anti-Semitic. We're not against Jews. We're just against Israel, and we're against the apartheid state. Where would you like us to live? Like, where do we get the world's permission to live? I'm grateful that I'm an American citizen, that my grandfather came over to this country when he was 11 years old and didn't become a citizen until he was 32 years old. It was the greatest day of his life. And I love my country, and I would give my life for my country. I also have a love for my Jewish homeland. And some people just can't quite understand. How could you love both? Well, I do. But where do we have your permission to live? You know how many Jews there are in Lebanon or Egypt or Syria or Iran or Iraq? There are hardly any. Because if we live there, or how many Jews there are in certain Palestinian villages in Judea and Samaria? None. How many Jews are there in Gaza? None, because it's a death penalty. Yet there are 3 million Arabs in Israel living as citizens.
Yeah, I mean, this is something, too, that I think people forget. And that was not the case 100 years ago. There are a lot of Jews who trace their lineage back to places like Egypt, places like Lebanon, places like Iran, places like Iraq. That it was not, but post-Holocaust, it's kind of this idea, and I always try to explain it, Coach Pearl, is that you could be a patriotic, proud American Jew, but there's this idea that there's got to be, because of recent history, World War II, and the Nazis, there's got to be a place of refuge when needed and necessary. And that's why the world came together and said, you know what, we need to make sure this people group has a place where they control their own security and their own future. And in case of any kind of danger, could welcome in Jews from around the world, as Israel does from Jewish groups from Ethiopia as needed, and other persecuted Jewish groups when needed. They bring in refugees a lot right now, I'm sure, pouring in from Eastern Europe, probably getting a second wave there because of the war with Russia and Ukraine. And so, again, it's been a place of refuge for the Jewish people. But as you pointed out, and it never makes the news, there are more and more Arabs getting involved in the IDF than ever before, that are joining the Israeli Defense Forces because it's the country they know. It's the country that's provided them the opportunities they've had. And so I'm just so thankful that we have individuals like you, Coach Pearl, because we're used to doing on the political side, on the legal side. We have an office in Jerusalem. We fight these battles out. but oftentimes it feels like it's very divided, and it's just we need folks who can talk to who are the basketball coach at a major university, who can talk to different people that I ever get to talk to say this is wrong. And you're so educated on the topic. I mean, we could go on and on, but Coach Pearl, let me just say thank you for what you're doing by speaking out, for using your social media, for using your voice, for using your platform to speak out. We so appreciate you taking the time to be on the broadcast today.
God bless America, and Am Yisrael Chai.
Thank you. That is Coach Bruce Pearl.